Welcome to the Lifestyle Builders Podcast, show 22. In our last episode, we talked about reasons you haven't started your business yet. In today's episode, we're talking with guest Dustin Heiner about using real estate to quit your job and live your dream life.
I started thinking, working is for suckers. And so I need to stop working for somebody else and figure out a way to make money to where I am actually making like 100% of my money. And so, fast forward to where I started a couple businesses one was a graphic design company. I started a retail establishment where I was selling, retail stuff, started a skateboard manufacturing business. So I've done so many things to try to not work for somebody else. But what I found the easiest thing that I out of all the businesses that I've started, the easiest one is real estate, but it's also the best one for me because I don't do any work.
All right, you guys, before we dive into the episode with Dustin, I wanted to give you a quick background on him and a little bit of a bio. He is the founder of Master Passive Income, a real estate investing website that teaches people how to invest in real estate. After just 8 years, he's had enough money to quit his job. At the age of 37, he now teaches others to become financially independent and never work a job again. He shares all of his experiences, his successes, his failures, all on his blog, in his best-selling books, on his podcast, and within his courses. With his real estate business, he only works about an hour a month and allows his automatic business to run on its own by employing others to do the work.
Wow.
Yeah, that's quite the background there.
Yeah. Well, and when Dustin and I met, I was like, man, this guy's like my brother from another mother.
Yeah, there are a lot of odd similarities between you and Dustin. And we found more while we were on the episode. Like I thought I knew them all, and then I had to cut them off at one point and say, wait a minute, you're the same there too?
Yeah. And, what's great about Dustin and the first time we met was, everything you said in his bio was true. He and it took 8 years to leave his job, so a lot of people think this is going to happen overnight, but he's a great example of how, and he even says in the episode, it took a year to buy his first property.
Yep. And
then from there, the time frame started reducing. But, we talk about systems and processes. Like while we were recording, he was actually in Europe on like a 6-week vacation with his family.
Yep. They were going all over Europe. They were only a second weekend out of 6 weeks and had all these other places they were going. It was amazing.
Yeah. So, he's the real deal. And, we talk about a lot of the good things of how do you actually build that type of a business so that you're not working in it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, we obviously.
So you don't get those 2 a.m. calls about a broken toilet.
I know. I don't know why it's always 2 a.m. We talk about that too. I don't know why it's always 2 a.m. in a toilet. Like, why isn't there any other issues? But anyways, obviously we have a real estate investing business and, we love real estate. And,
correction, you love real estate.
And Dustin really loves real estate.
Dustin really loves real estate.
So we dive into business, we dive into lifestyle, we dive into real estate. We get everything in this episode.
Yeah, we're so excited to share it with you. Enjoy.
All right, and we're back, and we have Dustin on the show today. Welcome, Dustin.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, you guys. I appreciate being here.
It's kind of cool. Like, obviously, I'm a real estate geek. This is how we got started in. And, little tidbit, my first podcast was on a real estate podcast, the Bigger Pockets one.
Yeah, I've actually heard that one. I remember before I met you, I actually listened to it. And then I met you in person. I had no idea. And you told me that you were on Bigger Pockets. And I went back and listened to it again. I was, oh, yeah, there's Tom. I remember listening to
that one.
So a crazy story about that. I was actually in New Jersey. We live in New York. And I was at like a real estate meetup. I'm like, while I'm in town, let me just go to the local meetup. And I'm talking to a group of people. And I have a guy like tap me on the shoulder. He's like, excuse me, this is kind of a random question, but are you Tom? And I'm like, I don't know anybody around here. Like, how's this guy know me? And he's like, oh, I listened to your podcast on Bigger Pockets, and I recognized your voice. And I was like, what? How? That's so crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. The random real estate connections, they come out. After you get into real estate, it's crazy just how many connections you make to other people and to other things you've heard before. And I'm sure you
completely
encounter
agree.
That as well.
Wholeheartedly agree. Yeah, the more I tell people that I do real estate, the more people either get interested in me or what I do because they're fascinated about it, or they're already in it and they want to know more about me and how I do my business, and I talk to them. But yeah, it seems like the real estate business, actually even on the online businesses, really this type of business is more of a team effort. We try to work, if you work together with other people, you actually help each other out and you benefit probably just as much as you're helping other people.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of that, the whole reason we got connected, we were at a conference, FinCon, and you met my roommate at that conference. And I think you guys were talking about real estate. And he's like, oh, you've got to meet Tom. And
absolutely.
If you want, just give people a quick backstory on how you got into real estate, and then you actually quit your job from real estate. So how did that whole thing come about?
So I knew that I've always been an employee. I mean, I think I was like 13 years old when I first got my first job. And so I've always worked. And then I think maybe my first real job, other than like delivering papers or, other things like that. But I got a job at Walmart. And Walmart, it was a good job. It's a great job. I just got my first check and I saw how much money was taken out of my first check. So not just Social Security, Medicare, all that sort of stuff, but also union dues were also taken. I said, what? They're taking money out? Like my paycheck should be so much higher than this. And so I started thinking, working is for suckers. And so I need to stop working for somebody else and figure out a way to make money to where I am actually making like 100% of my money. And so, fast forward to where I started a couple businesses one was a graphic design company. I started a retail establishment where I was selling, retail stuff, started a skateboard manufacturing business. So I've done so many things to try to not work for somebody else. But what I found the easiest thing that I out of all the businesses that I've started, the easiest one is real estate, but it's also the best one for me because I don't do any work. Right now, I'm currently on a 6-week trip with my family. I have my wife and my 4 kids. We're traveling all through Europe. We're going from England to Scotland. Now we're currently in Ireland. We're going to go to Israel, Austria, Germany, France, Belgium. We're going all over the place for 6 weeks. But the biggest thing is I don't have to do any work. Like I literally don't work. My property managers, my contractors, realtors, they do all the work and I just reap the benefit. So after all these businesses that I tried to start, I decided to look into real estate. I've always been interested in real estate. My dad he was a contractor, so I knew a lot about building homes and things like that. And so I just loved real estate. And so sorry, you're going to say something?
I just said the connections here are crazy because dad was in construction as well.
Oh.
Well, and that's why when we met, like we were talking, and as he was telling his story and I was telling my story, it's like, okay, they're like parallel paths. It's crazy.
Absolutely. So as I started looking more into real estate and seeing all the new shows popping up, like flipping houses and things like that, I knew that was not something that I necessarily want to do because once I flipped the house, I was done. I didn't have any more money coming in. It was good money, which is great. A couple of $20,000 would be really great to have. But I wanted income where I didn't have to work a job and didn't have to keep flipping properties. So I looked into doing real estate. Rental properties. And so I think it was like 2007, I took, so my wife and I had just been married for maybe 6 months. So we had like $17,000. I want to remember, I know that's how much we had because I took all of our savings that we had from both of us, bought our first house. And I said, hey, babe, you're going to have to trust me. And it was really rough getting her to sign off on the first one. But now she's looking back and saying, well, I'm so glad we have, praise the Lord, we have so many properties, we can do all this sort of stuff. But once I bought that first property, another tidbit was I lived in California. And when I was buying in 2007, it was the worst time to buy because the market was still skyrocketing up. And as I was looking for real estate in California, I could not find any. So I decided to look outside of California. And so I found a place in Ohio that had properties for sale that were really, really cheap compared to anywhere else. So I bought my first house for $17,000. That's how I remember the price or how much we had in savings. So I bought it for $17,000, got that rented out. And this was like 11 years ago, 2007, rented that one out. And then 3 or 4 months later, refinanced, pulled all my cash out and then bought my second property and then refinanced that one. After I got it rented, pulled all that money out, and then started buying more properties. And so since I was buying them for cash, I could just save up a little bit of money, buy another house, save a little more, buy another house. So I only had a few mortgages. Most of them were bought with cash. But that's how I got started, was just the one. And then after I got the taste of passive income coming in, I was just hooked. And I couldn't sacrifice enough. Like, okay, we can't go out and eat because I'm saving money to buy a house.
How'd your wife feel about that one?
She, after a while, once she started realizing how much money we're making over and over, she realized that it's best to put it off for the future, like, sacrifice now. So in the future, we can do things like this. Like we just went to eat at this pub down the street from the hotel. We're literally on the coast. I'm looking outside the window and there's the ocean right outside there. We went to this pub, had this fantastic dinner. My wife had a terrific time. So she realizes obviously now, back then, sacrificing to where we are now, it's amazing.
Yep.
I would say, so I want to dive into that a little more because that was a huge challenge for us is getting Ariana on board.
Yep.
And just like you said, I went around and I'm like, okay, well, let me try the stock market. Let me try an MLM. Let me try starting, I started like a tech business. And I always struggled to get her on board because, we were at very different points. So like, how did that go with you guys? How was that first conversation? And what was it that ultimately kind of made her shift?
So really for my wife, it took me running the numbers through with her. I needed to actually show her the entire business model, what we're going to be doing, how we're going to be working out the expenses, how we're going to work about the income, how we're going to manage the properties, how much money we're going to make every single month, how much the mortgage, basically walked her through every part of the business. Now, mind you, she didn't want to really learn the business so she can do it. She just really wanted to have a peace of mind. She's a numbers person. I am really definitely not a numbers person. She runs all the numbers for me, which is, I let her take, she's great at it. But after I ran her through all the numbers and she saw how much money we can make every single month, and on top of that saying, hey, babe, we're just going to do it. I got to take a chance. And so she believed in me. And so what was interesting, so the first one, it took like hours and hours of sitting down, walking her through every bit of it. The next one took maybe 3/4 of that time. The next one, it was less. Now I just, hey, babe, I bought 4 properties. She's all, okay. Because it's no
Sounds
big
good. Sounds good. Keep it up.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of the parallels there. I was actually a latecomer into the real estate business because he wanted to get into it, but he knew he couldn't do it on his own and looked for a partner, which ended up at first being his cousin. And they went in and bought their first house together. And then that was really to bring your dad around to show him that you were serious because he wanted to get in business with his dad. He was already into rental properties and doing that. But I think when Tom brought that up, he was like, "Nah, I don't. That's not for you. You're too young."
Yeah, like, what do you get?
Then when he bought the house with his cousin and they started renting that out, they went through and renovated everything. He was like, "Oh, you are serious." So then they started the business that we now still have, buying all the properties, renovating, refinancing, renting them out and stuff. So for me, I didn't really have to be involved at first, and I was happy with that. But along the way, I'm definitely the more detail oriented, and he was struggling with doing all of the detail oriented, like office type stuff.
Oh man, that stuff's horrible.
People into your properties and whatnot. And I took that on because that was very much what I was already doing. I was an administrative assistant in an office. So it was like, it just came naturally to me like, oh, this is stuff I already do. This is normal. So that's when I got pulled in to the first part. And then, obviously as we moved along, I got pulled into more and more and part of the decision-making stuff in that there. So I'm not in love with real estate like you guys, but I'm definitely have a very healthy respect for it. And I know what it can do for people and what opportunities it can bring.
That's awesome. Yeah, I absolutely love everything about real estate. I love talking about it. I love doing real estate. Like, in fact, I think it was a month ago, I just bought 3 single family homes and 1 duplex. And just because one investor was trying to sell all his properties, I said, okay, I'll buy them. And really great deal. Worked out really well. I got some seller financing part of it as well. But my wife, she's like, you take care of it. I know that everything's running fine. You take care of it. But if there's any, issues with anything I've questioned, like, hey, can you run these numbers? Absolutely. She loves looking at numbers. She wanted to be an accountant before we got married. And now she stays home and homeschools her kids while I do all the work on everything else. But she does. She's basically the brains. I just do all the work.
There you go. So like for us, because we always tell people, the business you start is really to enable that life that you want. And it's so fitting that you're now traveling, while we're doing this podcast interview, because it really shows the power of, doing some of those sacrifices, putting in that hard work and what it can enable. So like for us, when like Ariana left her job when our daughter was born, I left mine last year. What did that journey look like for you? And when did you guys make that decision to, leave the jobs and do this stuff full time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've always known that, with having kids, and a wife and kids, it's rather hard to just up and quit.
Mhm.
If I was single, it'd be so much easier for me to quit. So I realized that I needed to obviously provide for my family, and I need to also be able to buy more properties. I can't just, have enough just to live on. I wanted to do things like this where I travel all around the world, but at the same time, invest more and provide for my family. And so what it came down for us was first to make sure that our expenses were covered. Basically, my entire paycheck was taken care of, as well as all of our expenses were taken care of from the properties. As I actually went back and looked at all my purchases and how long it took me to get to that point, it took me 6 years of really working hard. I got 19 properties. I think it was in 6, maybe 7 years or something like that. And with that, I was able to surpass my income. But I didn't quit. I was gun shy. I was like, oh, well, I don't want to quit too early. Yeah, it's great having both money. I have my job. And anyways, it came down to where I started realizing I'm losing money working a job. And that's really hard to say, but even though I'm making money at the job, I'm losing money because my time is worth so much more than what I'm getting at my job. And I was making like 30, 40 bucks an hour or something like that, which is good.
Yeah.
But my life was draining away. It was wasting away. I hated working there, even though it was a good job. I was really blessed with the job, but now looking back, I'm so much better not having a job. Now, the 2 years, so it was around years 6 or 7 when I had enough money to quit. But at the same time, I wanted to make sure I was really well thought out. I didn't want to just, up and quit. So I looked about insurance, what I'm going to do about life insurance, health insurance, what I'm going to do with my vacation time that I have saved up. I had like 400 hours I had saved up. What am I going to do with I had lots of things to think about. And what was actually interesting was in writing, I wrote a book called How to Quit Your Job with Rental Properties. And so people really liked that book. And I thought, well, I'm going to write a follow-up book. I've quit. And let me tell you how I did it. And so the book's called Successfully Unemployed. And it's all the lessons that I've learned, the 2 years it took me to finally quit, from the time I had money to the time I actually quit, getting enough guts to do it, and then finally quitting my job. And then it was, quick funny story. In December of 2016, I had, I went to Boston, I went to Alaska, basically spent all my vacation time because I'd rather spend it, because if you spend your vacation time, you actually earn more while you're actually spending it. If you cash out, you get taxed, and there's, anyways, lots of things that so much more beneficial to spend it. So in December, I take another month off, and I was going to come back and work for another month. Well, I take that month off knowing I'm going to quit. I come back and I was going to work for at least like 2 weeks or a month just to get an extra paycheck. And I go back one day, like literally after an hour sitting there, I'm like, what am I doing here? My boss thought I was going to stay another 2 weeks or a month. I go into his office. Hey, boss, I'm done. I wanted to give you 2 weeks. I'm done. And so that last day, I was done. But it did take a lot of pre-planning to make sure my family was going to be taken care of before I could quit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love, just you going into that detail, because a lot of people see it and think that it happens overnight.
Yep.
And they don't realize that, you did it the smart way where you actually made sure the business built up enough income to cover that. And so we tend to find people that do one of two things. Either they're smart, they wait a little bit longer, even though it's maybe painful, but by the time they leave, they're in a really good spot. Yeah. Unfortunately, what a lot of people do is they end up leaving too early, and then, they might have some savings built up and they can they have some time, they have some runway to close that gap, but it puts a lot more stress on. And I'll tell you, every single person I talk to that stuck it out for a little bit longer and really made sure their business income was good had such an easier transition than the ones that tried to leave too soon.
Yep.
I would absolutely agree with that.
So
I had a friend that, sorry to interrupt. I had a friend that he was working for the UPS, and he hated working for the UPS. So he was selling birds on the side, swap meets and stuff like that. And he just hated it so bad, he just up and quit. He wasn't married then, but he said it was so much harder after he quit because he now had to work extra hard. He was thinking maybe he should have worked just a little bit longer. But that's just how my story is how I quit. Some people, it works out much better if they quit right away. But my personal opinion, it was better that I waited a little longer, especially I have 4 kids.
Yeah.
My wife and 4 kids, I want to make sure they were taken care of.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people struggle with, because they see the success stories and they see I did this overnight and then I left my job and blah, blah, blah. But what they don't see are the stories of people who have actual families that didn't do it overnight. We took the long-term plan and made
Yeah.
sure that our businesses were built the right way. We made sure that we had a plan in place. We made sure that we built the income enough up so that you don't have those stressors and those issues of leaving your job when you've got a family that's you're responsible for, because then that creates so much tension. I mean, if you've got one person who's bringing in all the income and that one person wants to leave, then now you've got the money talks and the stress there between you and your spouse.
Yeah.
Stress with the kids because you've got to provide for them, and then you're working from home and trying to figure that whole thing out, and it's so much change that the more planning you can do, the better off you are. But of course, no one wants to wait that long. Everyone wants to happen immediately. Like, come on, let's go.
Yep.
It can be a struggle mentally to prepare yourself. Like, I'm in this for the next 3 years and I've got to do this and this and this and be very specific with what I'm doing so that my end goal turns out the way I want it to.
Yeah. And as you say that, it got me thinking of when I quit my job. So I had enough hours saved up, but I also had enough money coming in that I was able to go to Alaska for a week and go hunting and fishing. I was able to go to Boston with my wife for a week and vacation. But even if I were to quit, 2 years earlier, we would have been able to be fine, but I would not be where I am now. And right after I quit, so I quit in January was my last day where I came and worked for like 2 hours and left. But in March of 2017, so last year about this time, I took my family to Japan for 6 weeks. We drove all over Japan, like 1,200 miles all around Japan, sightseeing from Tokyo all the way down to Hiroshima, back up. And it was amazing to be able to do that. And it's because I sacrificed for a couple more years just to make sure we had plenty of money and all the business rules and business processes set up so that I literally don't need to do anything. Like, I'm here in Ireland and my business is running without me. It's just absolutely fantastic.
So you talked about business roles and process, which we're huge fans of. And people always ask us, like, how do we run our multiple businesses? And, with kids, like same thing with you. And we always tell them it's processes, and then it's having a good team. It's having good people there.
Oh, 100%.
So walk me through a little bit of what are some of the core processes that you have set up, and how does everything run so that you can be in Ireland and not have to worry about it?
So you hit the nail on the head. It's having a team around you. It's having other either companies, or if you have employees, you have other people out there that are doing the work because they benefit from doing the work. My property manager makes money by managing my properties. My realtor makes money when they find me properties, bring it to me, and I buy it from them. So there's a mutual benefit as we work together. And so for real estate, investing in real estate rental properties, the biggest key to do what I do now is having a property manager. Now, to grow your business, it'd be with, like a realtor, contractor, subcontractors, and things like that to actually build the business. But right now, since I'm away, I'm not currently trying to build the business, but I want it to obviously maintain and go and continue working. So I have property managers that manage all my properties. Mm-hmm. So I invest all throughout the country. And so I like to make sure that everything's taken care of without me being there, because I'm not going to fly to Ohio and see the property and fix a toilet leak. I need somebody else to answer the phone call at 2 a.m. That's somebody, I want to pay somebody else to do that. It's worth my time to be able to sit here in Italy and sleep without even, being disturbed. Mm-hmm. But having a property manager be able to take care of that. So in my business, it's really all about finding a good property manager. If you have a good property manager, they're going to take care of everything from beginning to end, where if you find a property, or they could even find you a property where they go through it, they say it's going to take about this much to fix up. Obviously you get a contractor to make sure, double check the numbers and everything, but it gives you a ballpark. You can also say how much it should rent for, the likelihood of it being rented in a time frame, as what type of clientele you're going to get, all these different ideas of how your business is going to look like after you buy the property. Mm. And once you buy the property manager should be able to manage the rehab, the fixing of the properties, changing the carpets, painting, and all that sort of stuff. Then getting somebody moved in, finding the tenant, placing the tenant, and then managing the property as it goes. If there's any issues, they figure out how to get it working. So what I do with my business, if there's anything above $200, like, a toilet leaks, it's going to cost $50, $80, don't bother me with that. If it's over $200, just send me a quick email and I'll take a look at it. I want to make sure that it's not something that's out of the ordinary.
Yep.
Give you an example. There was a main line that comes in from the city, water coming into the house. Well, there was a tiny leak in it, and they said, well, it's going to be $2,400 to fix it. They got a quote really quick, which was good. But I said, well, for $2,400, here's a couple of things. You better give me at least 2, if not 3 quotes. We're not going with 1 quote. Absolutely. If it's like a $300 bill, okay, that's a little more lenient. But $2,400, there's no way I'm just taking 1 quote. And that night might not even be the problem because they wanted to replace the entire line. And so anyways, long story short, got 3 other quotes. If it turns out I didn't need to do exactly what they said originally, it was just this little part and so much cheaper. It saved me like $1,000. All that to say, having a property manager manage the business, but me giving them my business rules, like one would be anything above $200, send me a quick email, call me or whatever, run that through me. A big one when you get to real estate is, if you buy your first property, and I fell in this trap, I think almost everybody does, is you buy one property and you start being the nice guy. You know, like I want to be a nice house for people to live in. I want my tenants to be happy, as well as I'm going to be lenient. You know, they missed their payment on the first. I'm going to give them until the 28th before I say, hey, what's going on? Where's my money? Oh man, I got ripped off so many times. Oh, my son. My son went to jail, so I had to bail him out. Well, how many times did your son have to go to jail? Because last month he did it. You know, come on, you got to think about this. And so here's the biggest business rule I try to tell people who look to get into real estate, who are doing real estate, is really just set it up like you were. Think of like if you have a mortgage for your own house. The bank is after the first, once you make the first, you miss the payment window, you get a late fee. You don't get the late fee. They start the the foreclosure process, and they go through the whole process. Just think it like that. And so what I tell all my tenants, as well as people that I teach, the rent's due on the 1st. It's late after the 3rd. On the 5th, I give you a 3-day notice. Once that 3-day notice is up, then the eviction process started no matter what. And if you want to stay in the property, you have to pay for the eviction fees, the lawyer fees. You have to pay all the notices, late fees, everything to stay in the property, because I've lost thousands of dollars by letting people stay in the house way, way too long and being very lenient, saying, oh, I'll pay you next month, or I'll pay you 2 Fridays from now, or I'll pay you next Friday. And sooner or later, it gets to be like 3 months down the line. Okay, now I'm going to start the eviction, and now it's going to be a month later. So really, you need to just set up a business rule. And for me, it's those few things with the property manager saying, hey, don't even, unless they've been in there for 2 years. Like if somebody's been a good tenant for 2 years, they've been a really good tenant, paying all the time, being really responsible with the property, then talk to me about it. But if they've only been there for 3 months, 4 months, and they're already starting to be problematic, let's get rid of them. So that's the business processes. And that really came over time of trial and error, because man, I did so many things wrong. And now I really, praise the Lord, I have such a nice running company now that I don't have to do anything. All the property managers, everybody else does the work for me.
Yeah, well, you hit on a lot of great points there. And I mean, same thing with us. We calculated at one point, it was like we just want to cry. But we've lost like tens of thousands of dollars from a missing clause in a lease, from letting people stay in there way too long.
Trying to evict people and taking forever.
But you made a great point there, and like the first thing I hear, like the first fear that people have when they hear real estate is like, I don't want to get that 2 a.m. call. I don't know why it's always 2 a.m. call, and it's always the toilet, right? It's always the same thing. But what people realize is that you can design and structure your business in a way so that that's not you. Like when we open, like our properties are an hour away, our wine and liquor store is an hour away. We set those businesses up so that we could go out there if we needed to, but we're like, how do we structure this so that we don't have to? And, I think a lot of people, they just default to like, well, I'm going to have to do that. But, part of running that business is that you put those systems in place and you design it that way so that you really decide, what do you want to do? What don't you want to do? And then you put other people in place to really help support.
Well, and I think part of that comes in the planning process. So, obviously, big part of real estate is looking at the numbers up front. So look at this property. Let's look at how much I'm going to have to pay for renovations of the property. Let's look at how much the rent's going to be when I get tenants in there. Is it worth buying the property? But one thing you can also do is look at the maintenance on the property and add that property management fee right into any properties that you're looking to buy and say, if the numbers don't add up with the property manager included, it's not the place for me. And then you move on and you find something better. So, I mean, it's not about taking every good deal out there. It's about looking at it and making sure it's the deal that's right for you. And I think a lot of people just get in and get so excited.
Yeah, and along with that, Ariana, so what I do and what I teach is basically I never walk away from a property. And what I mean by that is, you know, if somebody says, well, it's going to cost $50,000 to fix it up. Well, I'm going to lower my bid by $50,000. I'm going to put that expense in there, and I'm going to leave the offer on the table. And if they want to come back to it and say, hey, we'll take your offer, I'm like, great. And they'll give you an example. So, and like I was saying, back in 2007, 2008, the market was coming up really high. But about 2010, market was almost at the bottom. And so there was a house, a bank-owned house, so a foreclosure. They were asking like $20,000 cash for this property. And this is a really depressed area of the country in Ohio. And I put an offer for $6,500, like flat cash, just $6,500, thinking, okay, I'll have room to negotiate to work my way up. They're 20, maybe might settle around 12 or something like that. And so they didn't even respond. They didn't say no, nothing. They just left it. 6 months later, I get a call from my realtor. Hey, is that $6,500 offer still on the table? I said, yes, it absolutely is. They said, well, they took your offer. They said, let's buy it. So I never walk away from a property. And like you're saying, Ariana, you're absolutely right. You make sure all the expenses are in there, from your taxes to your insurance to property manager fees. If you need to cut the lawn for whatever reason, make sure that's in there. Adjust your numbers so that they come back where they actually work. And then if they accept your offer, then, hey, you got a great property. If they don't accept your offer, move on. There's so many properties out there that you don't have to be settle on one. And that's a thing that I find a lot of new investors do. They look at a house like they're going to live in it. And that's not something you want to look at, as well as it's not something that you basically want to get someplace that people are going to like to live in. I mean, they're not going to be completely 100% happy with it. I mean, the tenants, renters by nature, they're more they're not permanent. They can move on at any time. They don't own it, and so you want to make it good for the property area. You want to make sure that you get enough money from the rents out of the area, as opposed to getting too low or too high. I've seen some landlords that had properties that they fixed it up so much that all the money they put into it, they're not going to get that back, because the rent is not going to increase that much just because they have everything brand new, granite everything and marble and all that sort of stuff. They're just not. I mean, it's a great property. It's fantastic. Somebody's going to love it, but the amount of money that's you're going to be able to charge for it, rent, is not going to pan out. But yeah, so I never walk away from any property. I make sure all the expenses are in there before I buy it. And if I buy it, if they take my offer, then great, and I have a great property.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I love it. 6,500. Our cheapest property was actually 4,000.
Oh, you beat me!
It had holes in the wall, though, like to the outside.
Well, so here's the thing. Just like you said, so it was a bank foreclosure, and
it's a beautiful house. It's 2,400 square feet.
2,600.
2,600 square feet with all the original molding and stuff around the windows and the really cool house.
Yeah, but basically it was going to be a full gut, and somebody had actually started to do a lot of the work, and they ran out of money or whatever. So we showed up and we didn't know what to expect. There was one other guy there. We put in a bid for 1,000. He came up to whatever. We went to 4 and it was done. But it's if you don't put the offer out there, there's no chance of it getting accepted.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And like you said, especially with real estate, a lot of it's just putting enough of those offers out there. And then I love the fact that was 6 months. You probably forgot about that.
I did.
No thought at all. And then now that's probably a great performing property for you.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I think one of the things too is for a lot of people, real estate's very intimidating, because there's so many different aspects and what you can do, and everyone sees the shows on the TV with flipping houses and they think that's what it means. But the best thing you can do is go out and get educated about the different types of real estate. There are so many people that are talking about it online. You have local places, like Tom used to go to the local RIA meetings and sit and listen, and you meet other people and you find out what they're doing. And how did you get into that? How did you decide to do that? And going to auctions and just sitting to say, hey, I wonder how much this house is going to go for. Oh, it only went for $4,000. So next time I go to an auction, I might want to bring some with me, and I might get my first deal on a house. Going into this with the open mind of learning and then coming back and deciding which route is the best one for you is the best way to approach real estate. And it doesn't have to be intimidating at all. Like it's that simple. You went, you had your $17,000 and you found a great deal. You bought your first house.
Well, and so based on that, I actually want to flip it. So obviously you mentioned a couple of your books. I know you've written several. You now teach a lot of people how to do the same thing. What is the approach or what's the path that you recommend people go through if they want to do the same thing that you've done?
I love that question. So one of the biggest things that I find that new investors, people who want to invest, their biggest concern is losing money. Obviously, anybody who's investing money at all, they're concerned about losing money. That's a risk that we all take when we start investing money. And so people start to be very concerned. Granted, absolutely, I was definitely the same way, but it's very valid to be worried about losing money. Now, I believe, and this is what I teach, that it's very hard to lose money if you know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. If you know what you're doing, you can actually make a ton of money. And one quick tip that I love to give is that I don't buy any rental property, any home at all, unless I'm making a minimum of $250 cash flow a month into my pocket. And that's not, I put in every expense I could think of into the property. And then when I buy it, and a minimum of $250 comes in my pocket, I'm never going to lose money. After the entire year of all that cash coming in, if I have a tenant move out, I still have cash coming in. If I have a furnace that goes out, well, I still have cash. And so I've seen some people try to buy a property with $50 profit a month. I'm like, that's absolutely not enough. There's things that are going to come up that are not going to be accounted for, like a furnace or a roof that you need to fix or something like that, where you need to have expenses that are outside of what you currently see. So what I usually do is try to put away everybody's fears about losing money, because if you get educated on how to actually invest properly, and here's the funniest thing. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but it's super easy to do this. All you need is education that would be from like a elementary school education. As long as you could, subtract and add. It's expenses versus income. It's super, super easy, but it's people get the nerve to buy the first property. That's the hardest one. Once you buy that first property, once you get the taste of that passive income that comes in every single month, once you get that, it makes it so much easier for you to buy the second and then the third and the fourth. Once I bought the first one, it took me like a year to buy that first one. But the second one, it was like 3 months later or 4 months later, I bought the next one and then kept rolling after that. But so what I would suggest is really start educating yourself on the whole investing in, well, there are many different types, like you were just saying. Different ways to invest in real estate. Flipping is one of them. There's wholesaling. There's tax liens and deeds and things like that. I personally focus solely on what brings passive income, and that would be rental properties. So to get into rental properties, really what it comes down to is looking at how much your expenses are going to be and how much you could rent the property for, and that would be your income. Making sure, I suggest, you get at least $250 a month in passive income every single month.
I like that.
Yeah. And you make a great point there. And people often ask us, they're like, well, how do you guys have like a real estate business and then a retail store? And then you're like coaching and teaching people, and they all have different businesses. And I like what you said there. Like we don't want to overcomplicate this. A business, whether it's real estate or something else, is, all right, what's my product? What's my offer?
Absolutely.
How much money am I going to have coming in from selling this? What's it going to cost me to do that? Yeah. And then what's my spread, and then making sure I've got the system set up for that. So, I love the fact, because that really is what it comes down to. So much of it's in our head, and we either have the fear or the overcomplication. But I love what you said too. It took a year for the first one. And then once you kind of figure things out, then every other one after that was a lot sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And here's the funny thing. And so I have dozens of properties, and I've literally only seen one of them. So it's just, I buy them sight unseen, because I have realtors, I have property managers, I have inspectors, I have contractors that do all the visual things for me. I can tolerate the risk. That's just maybe my personality, how it works out. Some people might need to invest in their backyard, which is great too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I completely agree. And Tommy, you used a word that's a great word, product. What product are you selling? For my rental properties, my homes, some people might think, this is a house. I don't look at it as a house. I look at it as an inventory. What inventory do I have that I can give it to, sell to some or rent to somebody else? And so I don't get attached to a property. If something happens to a property, I'm not emotionally attached to it at all. And it's just, I need to run it like a business. And my brain is so much more free because I don't have that worry. I don't have that in my brain of, oh, here's my home that I live in. No, it's not my home. It's part of my inventory or a product that I'm actually selling or renting out.
Yeah, well, and that's such a great point because a lot of those shows that you see on TV, they're picking out the counters and the colors and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And like you said, like you don't want to get emotionally invested. And unfortunately, a lot of people do that with real estate. And you really do have to have that mindset that this is a product and I'm going to use the numbers to help figure out, do I put this in there? And like for us, because like all of our rentals are in the same area, we've really systematized. So it's like when we get a property, here's the wall color, here's the trim color.
Exactly. The paint is the same color.
Yeah, I mean, everything.
It works fine. Yeah.
Right? Because it's a system. And now our properties are very nice. We keep them up. So it's not that they're bad, but it's systematized so that we're not having to spend time or, the contractor doesn't have to come back and say, what color do you want to paint this room? Like, here's the guide of standard color.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
The paint store just has they should just rename it to our business name. Color. But they know, when the maintenance guy goes to pick up the paint, it's the same color every time.
Yes.
He knows that. They know that.
And on top of that, you have, if you use similar or more than likely the same painter, hopefully he's going to paint the other houses. Well, he's not going to use every single gallon on one house. You can have left over, like buy in 5 gallons. Don't buy single gallons because I'm going to have another house coming up and you're going to need to paint that one. So just store that. This is where I'm going to use. But yeah, absolutely. Making sure that you have the business process set up, like just follow the rules. That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So
it does make it hard for pictures though. When we go to have the pictures on the website, I'm like, wait, which apartment is that? I don't know. It looks the same as that one over there.
That's
right. You're right.
We have to name the images like when we put them into the folder and be like, this is this apartment, this size. We need to know.
Yeah.
So let me ask, what's been the biggest either challenge or the biggest lesson learned throughout your years of doing this stuff?
We touched on it earlier, but it's basically run it like a business. That's how it has to be. And honestly, almost every single business that you're going to run, you need to run it like a business and take your emotions out of it as best as you can. I know we're emotional beings, and so our emotions can get involved in it, but as best as you can. And honestly, I found that the longer you do it, the easier it is to bring your emotions out. But run it like a business. And like I was saying, having a process of knowing what property to buy. On top of that, having a process to know when to evict somebody. Like I tell my property manager, do X, Y, it's due on the 1st, late after the 3rd, on the 5th, give them a 3-day notice. If they don't pay by then, start the eviction process. And so that was the biggest lesson because like you said, I've lost thousands of dollars because in the beginning I was so lenient. I was so, okay, their car broke down. I understand it happened to me. So maybe, I'm not going to say that everybody lies, but I don't take that anymore. Like I agree. There's bad things that can happen. I totally understand. But here's the perspective that I look. This is how I provide for my family. This is how my family gets food to eat. And so if I'm leaning on somebody else, which they could be telling the 100% truth, I'm not saying that anybody's lying. It just, I need to realize that this is not something that I can just throw away or have let somebody slide because I have no money coming in outside of this. This is my business. If I don't bring money in, my family doesn't eat. And so I need to make sure I run it like a business. So that is absolutely by far the best way to, or the best thing that I've learned, but also the best way to run your business. And we talked a little bit about evictions and having things last a little longer. I know that's a lot of people's concern is having 3-month evictions and stuff like that. Well, that's not very common, 3-month long evictions, or in fact, in Ohio, it's about a month at most from the day you file to filing the writ and all that sort of stuff and getting them out. But what I found is it's basically the cost of doing business, you add that all in. But if you add these processes in, the business process of telling the property manager how to perform well for your properties, you're not going to have these issues. I don't have long evictions at all. As soon as, like, all my tenants know, because as soon as the fifth rolls around, they get a 3-day notice. And as soon as that happens, that finishes up, the eviction process starts. Like, they know that. They don't have any history of me being lenient. So they don't try to be lenient at all. And so because I've implemented these processes, all these evictions are gone. All these problems. Oh, here's a big one. I need to throw in. Make sure you absolutely throw in a background check, or you absolutely have every single tenant do a background check. Yeah. One specific area that I invest in, the property manager said, well, these people, they don't have much money, and so they're not going to pay for a background check. And I said, fine, I'm going to pay for the background check, because I realized an eviction costs a ton of money. Turnover costs a ton of money. Rehabbing the property costs a ton of money. If I'm going to spend $35 to save me $2,000, that's money well spent. And give the example. So there was a lady that wanted to move in one of my properties. On the resume, she looked great, or the application looked fantastic. Had a great job, great rental experience, blah, 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 all this good stuff. Ran her credit. It turns out she was lying 100% on the application, and in the last 3 years, she was evicted 4 times. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be the fifth eviction or landlord fifth one to evict her. And so I said, okay, we're passing. And so that $35 saved me at least $2,000, $2,500. So putting these business processes in, my business has gotten so much more, basically the revenue coming in is steady, where it used to be up, down with evictions and tenants being out and all that sort of stuff. But as soon as I implemented processes in and making sure that I had everything running smoothly or well, my income just started being more stable. And I can now count on that income. Whereas in the beginning, I couldn't, because, I'm going to give them another month where they're going to get their stuff together, all that sort of stuff. So that was how it for me.
I was going to say, I want to hit on one point, then I'll shift it over to Ariana. So, oftentimes we're all lenient on tenants, but here's the thing at the end of the day, like, even if we look at ourselves, if you don't have enough money to support your lifestyle, everyone's got to prioritize things. And the number one thing that we should all be prioritizing is where we live.
The roof over your head.
The roof over your head, the food, like that type of stuff. And what
your car
and what we found with people is basically what people are going to do is they're going to say, well, let me check and see, who's the one that I can forget about, and it's not going to be a big deal. And oftentimes going to a landlord tends to be the first one, because they can talk to a person and that person is going to be lenient.
And it's the most amount of money, so they figure they'll get
exactly
the best result.
But what we found, and you said as well, is we really indoctrinate them from the start. So even screening process and all of that, we're setting those expectations, and then we let them know, like, hey, it's due on the 1st, late on the 5th, you're going to get your 3-day notice. And the first time that happens, they then tend to not kind of test things.
But, absolutely.
If you're not thinking that way and you're not running it like a business, you can really lose a lot of money.
You absolutely can. See, there's a tiny, quick little story that I've heard that really is applicable. So imagine there was a king who was over his entire kingdom. Well, he first was really lenient, really giving, and really just really trying to be a friend to everybody, be as nice as he can to everybody. Well, people eventually started taking advantage of him. And so after a while, he said, I got to start putting my foot down. Then he puts his foot down, and they start getting mad at him, and they start rebelling against him. As opposed to another king who from the very beginning was not, lording it over them, being a horrible king. But he was like, no, these are the rules. You follow the rules, and you're going to be fine. Well, from day one, they understood the rules. He's never lenient on it, and nobody ever wanted to rebel, because they realized, hey, he says what he does what he says, and he means what he says. And so if you just lay down the rules first, never be lenient on them until, like I said, if a tenant's been in there 2 years, I'm going to give a little bit. Hey, you've been a great tenant. I understand things happen. Let me help you out. But this is not going to be a regular thing. I actually expressly make sure that's known. The property manager must tell them, hey, this is a one-time thing because you've been a great tenant. This is not going to happen again. But putting your foot down from the very beginning, saying these are the rules and sticking to them, it saves so much headache in the long run.
Yeah, I love that. All right. I know you guys could probably talk about real estate all day long. But Dustin, where can people find you if they want to reach out, if they want to find out more?
Yeah, so I have my blog, masterpassiveincome.com. So I have my blog. I have a podcast as well, Master Passive Income Podcast as well. And so if you go there, you can find me. I try to make my information of how to get a hold of me very, very well known. Dustin at Master Passive Income is my email. So you can email me, ask questions. I love talking about real estate. I love helping people. And so I get so many people emailing me, how do I get started? Hey, I have this problem with this tenant, or hey, I want to buy this house. What do you think about this house? And so I get so many people emailing me, asking me those questions. I don't mind because I absolutely love talking about it. So it's easy for me to, to reply. So you can go to my website. I have articles on there that I've written over the, many years of learning about real estate and all the processes that I've developed and the business that I've started and making it an automatic business. I have those on there. I put actually what I've recently been doing since I've been traveling all through Europe. I've been making quick little videos of the area. So I've been putting those on my website as well. If you want to see those, it's just been a blast going through and traveling. But yeah, Master Passive Income is the best way. And my email is Dustin at masterpassiveincome.com.
All right. And we will make sure that is all in the show notes for all of you, which is going to be at tomandariana.com/22. And you guys, it's been another great episode on Tom and Ariana. Wait, nope, definitely just said that wrong.
Wow.
So, so fried with Tom and Ariana, your hosts and lifestyle builders. And Dustin, we want to extend a special thank you to you for coming on and just giving all of the wisdom around real estate and how people can do it and make an actual business out of it with passive income and live the lives that they've always wanted to. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for everyone listening, as always, remember, it's your life, your business, your way. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Are you frustrated by a lack of momentum in your business? Do you want real-time guidance and support from seasoned entrepreneurs who really care about your results? If you're nodding your head or awkwardly shouting yes in public somewhere, then we invite you to join Lifestyle Builders, a mentorship program designed to meet you where you are and give you strategic and custom guidance so you can build the business you need for the life you crave. You can find out more at joinlifestylebuilders.com.
Your life, your business, your way. Join Family Entrepreneur Life. Join Family Entrepreneur